In about 2 minutes or 1 minute or whenever you see fit, just do whatever you do. Just throw something at me. Your phone. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's awesome. Good morning, representatives, and welcome to the seventh day of the session, 2025 68th Wyoming Legislature. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the seventh day, January 22nd, 2025. Alamand? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Brady? Brady?
Excused.
Bratton? Brown Gary? Brown Landon? Byron? Campbell Elisa? Campbell Kevin? Chestick? Plouston?
Excused.
Connolly? Davis? Eklund? Erickson? Filer? Geringer? Guggenmoss?
Excused.
Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Heft?
Excused.
Jarvis? Johnson? Johnson? Kelly? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Lean? Locke? Lucas? McCann?
Excused.
Nicholas? Ottman?
Excused.
Pendergraft? Posey? Provenza? Riggins? Excused. Rodriguez Williams?
Excused.
Schmid? Sherwood? Singh? Smith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Thayer? Washut? Wasserberger?
Excused.
Webb? Weber? Worf? Williams? Winter? Wiley? Yin?
Excused.
Mr. Speaker.
Here. We currently have our health and labor. They had an extremely large group down there they were trying to work through, so I'm sure they will be here directly. So we will hold the roll open until they return. Next, we will have our prayer by Representative Chairman Art Washer. Please.
Members, this morning, prayer is going to be taken from Matthew 5, the teaching of our Lord. He teaches us, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Representative Washut. Fellow members and guests, join me in the salute to our flag. Greet each other, ladies and gentlemen, for a brief moment while we await the rest of our committee to return. Love for y'all to continue to visit and enjoy each other's company, but I do see that we have our Health and Labor has returned to the chamber, so Chief Clerk, if you would like to continue and complete the roll.
Brady? Klauston? Guggenmoss? Heft? McCann? Ottman? Rodriguez Williams?
Excused.
Wasserberger? Yin? Mr. Speaker, 60 present, 2 excused.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of January 21st, 2025 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Jarvis and Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Reader. We do not have any messages from the Senate, I understand. So we will go on into introductions. Okay, we are at that order of business for introduction, reading, and reference of bills. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 125.
House Bill 125, sponsored by Representative Washit.
First reading of the bill.
Repeal unauthorized use of vehicle crime.
House Bill 125 will be assigned to our Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 189.
House Bill 189, sponsored by Representative Lean.
First reading of the bill.
Harmful communications, minors.
House Bill 189 will also be sent to our Committee Number 1, Judiciary. House Bill Number 126, next bill for our consideration.
House Bill 126, sponsored by Representative Filer.
First reading of the bill.
Sales tax on services, repeal.
House Bill Number 126 will be sent to our Committee Number 3. House Bill Number 130, next bill for our consideration.
House Bill 130, sponsored by Representative Heiner.
First reading of the bill.
Homeowner tax exemption amendments.
House Bill Number 130 will be sent also to our Committee Number 3. House Bill Number 31, next bill for our consideration.
House Bill 31, sponsored by Representative Pendergraft.
First reading of the bill.
School safety and security.
House Bill 31 will be assigned to our Committee Number 4, Education. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 244.
House Bill 244, sponsored by Representative Winter.
First reading of the bill.
Carbon dioxide pipelines, eminent domain prohibition.
House Bill 244 will be assigned to our Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 178.
House Bill 178, sponsored by Representative Sherwood.
First reading of the bill.
Work allowance for voting.
House Bill Number 178 will be assigned to our Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 262.
House Bill 262, sponsored by Representative Johnson.
First reading of the bill.
Counties, limitations on holding reserves.
House Bill 262 will be assigned to our Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 237.
House Bill 237, sponsored by Representative Wiley.
First reading of the bill.
License plate issuance.
House Bill 237 will be assigned to our Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 242.
House Bill 242, sponsored by Representative Tarver.
First reading of the bill.
Manufacturers and dealers of new trailers, changes.
House Bill 242 will be assigned to our Committee Number 8, Transportation. And last bill for our consideration will be House Bill 201.
House Bill 201, sponsored by Representative Wasserberger.
First reading of the bill.
State funds, investment in Bitcoin.
House Bill 201 will be assigned to our Committee Number 9, Minerals. And that completes our introductions for today. All right. Unless something's changed, we do not have any reports from standing committees, so. Yes. Oh, Representative Yin, please.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Absolutely.
Mr. Speaker, so members, we have several electeds watching us today, as well as every other day. But today in our North Gallery, we have our clerks of district court from around the state. We have several of them. We have Ann Sutton from Teton County. And please, I apologize, I may butcher some of your names. We have Mona McCall from Platte County, Brandy Correa from Goshen County, Pam Merchant from Campbell County, Stacy Lamb from Albany County, Carrie Wright from Uintah County, my phone turned off, Jill Keister from Natrona County, Paige Rhodes from Johnson County, Donna Lee Bobeck from Sweetwater County, Amanda Sanchez from Fremont County, Diane Sanchez from Laramie County, Mara Sanger from Carbon County, and Janet Montgomery from Sublette County. Please welcome them to the House.
Welcome, clerks, to the House. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and visit us. Enjoy your stay, and thank you for all that you do for all of our counties. We're glad that you're here. Bills on second reading. Move to that. Okay, we are at that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 18.
House Bill 18, sponsored by Education, Career Technical Education Funding.
House Bill 18, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 46. We have amendments.
House Bill 46, sponsored by Representative Strzok, Homeschool Freedom Act.
Amendments we have, the one I have here. Second reading amendment number 1 will be brought by Representative Jarvis. Again, I remind everyone, these are two bites at the apple, first and second opportunity to speak to the amendments. Representative Jarvis, please proceed. Please move the amendment.
Thank you, Speaker. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 and ask for favorable consideration. I'll now explain the amendment. On page 1, line 3, it's after board, inserting providing for the submission of a verification form to the local school board. And on page 2, line 3 and 4, it's delete entirely and insert educational program to submit a verification form to the local school board of trustees attesting that a curriculum is administered. So first and foremost, I am for this bill 100 times over for Homeschool Freedom Act. And totally okay with removing the school board's responsibility to go through a homeschool curriculum. I have a little bit of questions there on if we're creating a literate society, but that's a discussion for another day. Because pretty much all of our homeschool kids in the districts that I have been in Wyoming do a phenomenal job of homeschooling their children. My problem with this bill is, where does it say in this bill that the school district's not responsible for coming to see if you're homeschooling? If this goes through, and it is truly legally defensible, does that make us as school districts not responsible for any child that doesn't show up in our school that day or that week? Do we just assume that they're homeschooling? There's no verification on who's homeschooling and who's not. This actually really has the potential to do a lot of harm. Because does it make the school district now not responsible for those couple cases? Because I can tell you, with the verification process before, and we knew who was being homeschooled and who wasn't, those kids who were not signed up for homeschool, and we showed up at their houses, we've had a lot of issues with child safety and neglect and abuse and things that are happening. Did we just now make it exempt to allow that to happen to those children specifically? Because we now don't have to go see? We have no way of telling who's homeschooling and who's not. So is this exempt from this? Are we exempt from checking? All this amendment is doing is saying, hey, and I'm sure you could write in here and amend it that it could be mailed in. Let us know you're homeschooling your kids so we don't have to worry about them. Let us know you're homeschooling your child so we don't have to worry about them. This is not an oversight. This is not a coming because we don't have to worry about the homeschool kids. Can things happen still? Yep, but it statistically doesn't happen in Wyoming. Statistically, our homeschool parents do a phenomenal job. And I'm in full support of homeschool because there are a lot of situations in Wyoming where remote and traveling, and it is actually the best for a child of not putting a kindergarten baby, a 5-year-old, on a bus for an hour and a half. Like, those aren't the best situations. And if the parents have the means to do it, by all means, do it. Because those kids come out very well educated, and they do very, very well. So my question is, at the end of the day,
What's your point?
look at this amendment seriously.
Excuse me, Representative Jarvis, excuse me. Point of order? He go.
Forgive me,
Representative Hale.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's speak to the amendment.
How was I not?
Please proceed.
Nowhere in this amendment does it say that the school district is not responsible. This holds the potential that the school district still has to show up to see if you're homeschooling or not. And it's more a question, and the verification that I'm requesting is really child safety. Like, love this. It's a beautiful bill, but does it protect all children in Wyoming that aren't at school?
Thank you, Representative Jarvis. And I will also want to reiterate this as debate continues. If you have a point of order, go to a microphone, declare the point of order, and you will be recognized by the chair. For the others that are in the debate, always address your questions or anything like that to the chair. Do not address another legislator. Everything goes through the chair, ladies and gentlemen. That keeps decorum, and that keeps us able to control the process here so that somebody doesn't get run over the top of. So with that in mind, thank you. Representative Kelly, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on and against the amendment, and I'm speaking for homeschool parents who have contacted me, who are some of the most involved and invested in their children's education. And they have spoken to me loudly and clearly, and would like me to tell you they would like to be left alone.
Thank you, Representative Kelly. Representative Lean, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment doesn't allow the amount of change and paperwork to happen so that we're still presenting to the government what we're doing. This allows the government overreach for parental rights and education to continue. And to speak to the literary standards, I just want to know where in the districts in our great state is 80% or more of literation happening? When you want to say that homeschoolers aren't meeting that criteria, I push back and digress and say, where is the district meeting that? I understand that there is educational neglect and educational abuse that is always on the mind of everyone. This happens in a free society. With the good comes the bad. It is in all cases, not just education. And so with that, I stand to say that you must believe in the people of Wyoming, that they are a greater good, and that we are not going to subject our children to a lower standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lean. Representative Pendergraft, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to point out a concept that I don't want us to lose sight of today, and that is that the children don't belong to the state. The state has in its inception in the Constitution, guaranteed a safety net, that nobody's going to go without an education, but it's not the state's responsibility to intrude into a family and decide what is and what is not an education. If the parents choose to put their child into a public school, the public school then is obligated to provide an education. But the first and foremost responsibility is to the parents. If the parents are satisfied, everybody should be satisfied.
Thank you, Representative Pendergraft. Representative Andrew, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against this amendment. This amendment, I think it's well-intentioned, but it really makes this bill do nothing. All we have right now in our statute was just something that was a notification, that we couldn't scrutinize the curriculum or anything like that. What the purpose of this bill was to get parents out of having to do this bureaucratic step of notifying the school district. And I'm not sure that this amendment is going to take care of any of the problems that we're worried about. The department that deals with services relating to families testified that they've seen 50 allegations of educational neglect. Only 25 of those turned out to be legitimate, and 0 of those resulted from inadequate reporting of homeschool curriculum. Further, there is no federal law that regulates homeschool. And I don't think we need to be worried about anything that we may run into in that realm either. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Andrew. Representative Brady, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to say I'm opposed to this amendment, and I would like to say the government is not the nanny over parents or children, and we do not co-parent with the government. So I'm against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative
Strzok.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I know Tommy comes out easier, doesn't it, Speaker? Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. So this proposed amendment is a direct attack against homeschool freedom. HB 46, as originally drafted, provides greater freedom to homeschool families and supports Wyoming's leadership as a state that respects parental rights. This proposed amendment rejects all of that in favor of continued permission slips from the government. So I would ask for a no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Strzok. Representative Harrelson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. So the CAPTA, there's a direct exemption for homeschool students.
Point
on
of
that.
order, CAPTA was never discussed today.
Excuse me, please state your point again.
The CAPTA was never discussed today in the amendment, and we're talking about the amendment today.
Thank you, Representative. Representative,
Mr. Speaker,
proceed.
but that does apply to students and regulation of students in regards to homeschooling. So I do believe it is germane to the amendment.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Homeschool students are specifically exempt from that. And at the end of the day, it is not the role of the government to tell parents what to do with their children. Parental rights is one thing that we have in America that probably sets us apart from almost any other society is our parental rights ability. And at the end of the day, I can say with confidence, and I can say this because I'm in the government, but parents have a better understanding and idea for their children than the government does, every single time. And so we are at a point where it is not the role of the government to do this. Now, are there sad situations? Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. But we have to understand that it is not the role of the government to dictate in the lives of families or parents. And this is an opportunity for us to get rid of an oversight that I believe is out of line for the parental rights statutes. And so it is not the role of the government to check on every kid running down the street. We have the ability as parents to take care of our own and take care of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Larson Lloyd, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the bringer of the amendment because I'm a little confused at the conversations I have. I think, and I appreciate everything that this bill does, and I don't think that the way I understand it, and if she could correct me on that, it is not requiring approval to homeschool. It's not seeking permission. I think what the amendment is trying to do is support the effort of the bill so that when in a school district you have some anonymous neighbor that doesn't know that their other neighbor is homeschooling and the kids are out doing a project assigned to their homeschool curriculum, that somehow they're not where they need to be. So they call the school. And the school then, I think, if I'm hearing correctly, feels an obligation to send the school resource officer or whomever out to investigate and say, why aren't these kids in school? And I think what the amendment is trying to do is say, we don't want to go investigate. Have no desire to go do that. Just let us know you're homeschooling. So when these types of things come in, we can look in the file and say, yep, the Larson family is homeschooling. Got it. We don't have to go investigate. Now, if I'm misunderstanding that incorrectly, correct that. But I don't think we're asking for any more oversight. I think we're trying to help the schools help you to keep them out of what it is you're trying to do. So if I could get some clarification on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Larson. Representative Washut, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So a question for the bringer of the amendment. I think I understand what you're trying to accomplish here. It seems to me that it's most applicable to students who have been enrolled in the district and then quit coming. And that what this amendment's about is to try to be able to verify their status, because we homeschooled our kids, and I understand the whole desire for some limited role of government there. But on I can see the point where a child doesn't show back up after Christmas vacation. The district saying, where's Johnny? Where is this kid, right? And the parents made the decision over the break to switch to a homeschooling approach. That doesn't seem unreasonable for me for the district to get some notification about that, whether it's a verification form or whatever. But is that the intent of this bill, to try and cover situations like that? Or your amendment, not the bill, but your amendment?
Thank you, Representative. Representative Angelos, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think one thing we want to make sure we're not doing is having the school district police our children. I think if you as a neighbor, speaking to the last speaker, have a concern with a child in your neighborhood or one that's not in school, we need to be contacting the police department, not the school district, to figure that out. So I think that's just something we need to take pause at, is that is between the police, that is between DFS, not the school district.
Thank you, Representative Angelos. Representative Clouston, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as a former two-term school board member, we never once denied the curriculum that we saw from the homeschoolers. They were all excellent. Everyone was approved, and it was very cumbersome. So fully in favor of this law. But I can tell you, if we have a student who had been in our district and then isn't showing up, it would be nice to have a form that just says, my child is homeschooling now instead of attending public school. So that's really all this amendment is asking for, is a simple form saying, my child will homeschool versus attend public school. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Connolly, for first time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just see this amendment as just a more of a courtesy to the school district to say, my child is being homeschooled. It's not asking for permission. It's not asking the school district to get involved in any of the homeschooling efforts that they're doing with their children. It just appears to me to be a courtesy to say, my child is a homeschooled child. I'm all about this homeschool freedom bill. I think it's good. I just think out of courtesy, when I've talked to my district folks, they don't want to be telling homeschool parents how to school their children and what they need to do and how they need to do it. They're just asking for a one-time notice that says my child's a homeschooler, so I'm in favor of the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Connolly. Representative Provenzer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this amendment protects families from potentially having to deal with sticky situations where the department that oversees our families show up to their house because a call was made because they didn't receive a notification. So it impedes on if the district gets a call and they know now that this kid's going to be homeschooled, they're not going to have to call DFS to say, this kid's not showing up. And while, you know, one of the good representatives from County 8 said that we should support the parents every single time, my family used to do foster care, and we had kids that showed up to our house with cigarette burns on their bodies, just terrible abuse and neglect, hadn't left their home. They'd never even ridden in a vehicle before by the time they were 8 years old. Some of these kids aren't leaving the house, and sometimes these districts are the check potentially to seeing that there's abuse and neglect happening. So I think it's prudent that we allow for the people that have been seeing this child every day to just get a notification so that we're not sending another government agency to their home. Thank you. On and for the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Geringer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand the intent of the amendment. I also understand the intent that, as another representative pointed out, about the courtesy of that notification. And while I agree that it would be courteous to notify, we shouldn't, if we put it in statute, it is no longer a courtesy, it is a requirement. And so I am speaking on and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Geringer. Anyone else for their first time? No one running for the microphones? Second time. Representative Harrelson, your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the scope and sequence that we currently administer to, or we submit to our school, if we put this into place, there's the verification of form, right? A verification form, and then a testing that a curriculum is administered. So basically, the only difference is between what is current statute and what would be if this amendment were to go into place is you don't have to submit a scope and sequence, but you still have to submit a curriculum, just not the scope and sequence of said curriculum. And then one of the things I need to talk about is truancy does not apply to homeschool students, period. We're outside of the homeschool students are outside of the truancy statutes. And I'll give an example. My son we get up early at our house. We're the type of person that if you want to have breakfast with us, you better be at our house by 6 a.m. because breakfast is going to be eaten by, well, probably even before that. So my son starts his school at usually around 5:30 to 6 in the morning. So my son's been asked before, why aren't you in school at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, because he started at 6 a.m. and worked hard until noon. And so that's kind of something that, I mean, that's the beauty of this type of a system. And so I think that the truancy issue obviously applies here. And as we're talking about leaving a school, so if an individual is enrolled in a school and then leaves that school, say mid-year over Christmas break, as we heard in this, I think if that were to be addressed, then there needs to be a different amendment that simply just says, if you are removing a student from public education, that you just have to just give a letter or a call to the school to say that. But that's not what this amendment does. So on and against, I believe that if we put this amendment into place, really all we're doing is changing one simple, very simple thing, and that's just not having to submit a scope and sequence, but you still have to do all the rest of the same functions that is currently in statute. So it would pretty much make this bill null and void.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Brady, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I just pretty much in agreement with the last speaker, just saying that if they're calling up looking for Johnny, if the school district is, I would assume that Johnny is a registered student and that they probably have a concern. But if they're fully homeschooled, no call necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Kelly, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to address the point. Well, I understand the intent of wanting to save parents from the unpleasant visit from a government entity. Let's not lose sight of the principle that it is not our job to protect adults from themselves.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Ocean Andrew, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think one thing we need to think about is that there could be an unintended consequence of this amendment that actually endangers children. If all the department has to do is call a school and get verification that someone has submitted a piece of paper that someone is homeschooled, and then nothing has to be looked into anymore, then maybe it should be looked into. I mean, it's potentially an unintended consequence.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Strzok, your second time.
Thank you, Speaker. I was just going to relieve some people's minds what happens when you do pull a kid out. I had a child in first and second, and of course, COVID happened through that. And so the next fall, I was not enrolling him. This school actually called me and said, "Are we going to have your son this coming year?" Was not a problem. It didn't hurt them, or as a parent, if it had gotten to that, if they hadn't called me first, because they actually called me in July. And so if it hadn't, I could just call and say, "Hey, I'm homeschooling." I mean, that it's as easy as that, the school to call and say, "Is your student going to be back?" I'm not sure why this paper needs to be helping with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lean, for your second time.
On and against the amendment, I just want to draw the body's attention that 11 states currently have no regulation, and they aren't failing. So why can't Wyoming be number 12? Why can't we revolutionize freedom for the homeschool community and give them the choice that they deserve? I also want to say that we're trying to free up some money within the resources of the district so that we don't have one person dedicated to monitoring what homeschoolers are doing, submitting those curriculums, sending them to the school board to be approved. We're trying to free up some of the time and get rid of that bureaucratic layer within our school districts, within our school boards. On and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Lean. Representative Pendergraft, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for not having the citation here. I'm desperately trying to find it. But I believe that currently under Wyoming statute, because this is what many homeschoolers do, if you intend to homeschool, you send the notice to the school district that year that you're going to homeschool and nothing further is required. I will bring that citation as soon as I can locate it. Given that, my issue with this particular amendment, which is very similar to what I'm suggesting is already in statute, gets into the realm of curriculum and verifying curriculum. And that is a place that parents, homeschool parents, don't want to go. We don't want to have a government agency of any type telling us what curriculum we have to follow. Thank you, and I will probably be by third reading, but we'll find it.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their second time? Representative Larson Lloyd, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think there's been a couple of examples, and I really think that everybody thus far is trying to, wants to support this bill and gets it. Parents should have a right to allow their kids parents have the right to teach their kids at home. I think what we're trying to do is uncouple some of the requirements that school districts have that then become intrusive on the intent of this bill. For example, in 21-4-104, the attendance officer is to investigate causes of unexcused absences, habitual truancy, and willful absenteeism. Now, the good Speaker Pro Tem noted truancy and willful absenteeism because he gets it, but if you don't know that the family's homeschooling, you may not know that they're homeschooling. And so that report comes, and then it says that that he is supposed to counsel to investigate that willful absenteeism and then to give notice to the parent, which the homeschoolers don't want to have. My son and his family don't want to have the school board or the school resource officer showing up their house and given written notice about the attendance of their child at school is required under 21-4-102. So we're just trying to prevent the intrusion of the laws that we have in place, putting these kind of conflicts in place. So I hopefully, maybe if we don't get it right, this Second Amendment, let's try and undo some of those requirements to where this overreach or this and yet requirements isn't causing us problems that we just don't want to have and don't need to have.
Thank you, Representative. Any others like to speak the second time? Reminding the body, this is the second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 46. Second time. Right now I have Representatives Washut, Angelos, Clouston, Connolly, Provenza, and Geringer that could speak. Seeing none, Representative Jarvis, bring us home, please.
Thank you, Speaker. So I listened to all my wonderful representatives that spoke from around the state of, can I say Wyoming? Is that one? Around Wyoming. And I listened to some of the rebuttal for this amendment and some of the support. Here is the only thing that I'm asking. Just tell us that you're homeschooling. And an assurance, just so you know, is all it is a checkbox that I assure that I'm doing this, and I use the exact language to honor the language that was amended. So you are exempt from having to provide any type of curriculum. You are just saying you do it, and that is sufficient. There is no need in any type of an assurance, because when we submit assurances to the state, all we say is, yep, we do it. Someday, if it has to come to prove that's because something bad happened somewhere, they just accept it and they say, great, you put your name on it, and in Wyoming, your word is worth something. So an assurance does not involve any type of scope and sequence, any type of curriculum that is now being required. Yeah, it is a problem. You're not wrong on where does the government start and where does the government end? But nowhere in this bill, as it's currently written, does it exempt, unless you call it out and say the school districts are no longer responsible. But then when do we know it's a truancy issue, and when do we know you're homeschooling? When do we know, and yep, it's a simple call and a conversation? Great. Then make that the verification. Make the verification that the school district can call. But then what happens when the parent comes back and says, I never said that? There's nothing in writing. A lot of the times we just take word, but it puts the school districts in a really, really bad situation of how to interpret this. I want to honor homeschool. I want to give you the full ability to exempt yourself from government overreach. All I'm asking for is just let us know you're homeschooling. Then that solves the issue. You're not one of our truancy cases.
Question being called. This is the vote being taken on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 46. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has not been adopted. Just for information's sake, that took 32 minutes. House Bill 46, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 47.
House Bill 47, sponsored by Blockchain. Secretary of State, expedited filings.
House Bill 47 has amendments. First amendment will be brought by Representative Filer. Representative Filer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47, and I will withdraw it at the appropriate time, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Yeah, you can. Why can't I withdraw it? You can't? Oh, you can't withdraw. Okay. Well, then I guess, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47. We'll discuss it, and then I'll also not support my own amendment. I think it just brings up a conversation. So members of the body, as we go through, we're looking at ways of cutting costs and all these different things in all of our state agencies. I think that any time that we bring an appropriation that we're going to vote on to extend more money to any agency for growth of employment, I do believe that they need to have a report of how we're actually paying for that employee. But I know this already gets done in one of our great committees, I believe, and they can ask those questions. But I just want to caution us that when we go out there and we want to just start appropriating money to grow government, we really need to make sure that we have checks and balances in place to where we're not just overspending over ideology or anything else like that. With that, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker, I ask for your no vote.
Question being called. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47, please signify by saying aye. God bless America. All those opposed, no. Thank you. The amendment has been rejected. Next, yes, and I'm gonna have, before Representative Smith, if you start, I would like to have Representative Brown kind of explain that a little bit further for all of our new members.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Speaker. Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So, body, the reason, once you move an amendment in rules, that becomes the body's decision. The only rule that we allow that exception to is when we delete the enacting clause on 3rd reading. So because if we enacted that and we voted aye on that, that would essentially kill the bill. We ultimately say, no, we're going to pull that back and then you get to vote on that particular bill with just what you're doing there. But when you move an amendment, it becomes all of our amendment. We voice our either support or denial on that. You are not able to retrieve or pull back that amendment once it's been moved to the body for your consideration.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Representative Provenza, you also have a bit of information for the body. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, at every podium that we speak at, we put the language for moving an amendment so that you know what you need to say when you move an amendment. It says in the quotes, I move committee of the whole amendment, and you need to change that to second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill whatever. So just making sure that that language is up there for you to make it a little bit easier so that we're moving amendments correctly. So just look at the top of the podium when you get there if you get flustered.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Smith, now, we are now on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 47. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 2 for House Bill 47 and ask for your favorable consideration. And I will now explain the amendment.
Please proceed.
Basically, just deleting the July 1st start date and inserting immediately upon completion of all acts necessary for the bill to become law. Basically, this would just give the agency a few extra months to hire the individual and potentially increase revenue that much quicker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Larson, Lloyd, for your first time.
Thank you. The problem with that is then you create a budgetary issue because the budget in the Standing Committee amendment was for 12 months. Now you've gone to 15 months without changing the appropriation. And so you've reduced the amount of money. If they hire that individual before the end of this fiscal year, they're going to have less money in the that full-time employee by the end of the biennium. So with that in mind, I would encourage you to vote this amendment down.
Representative Yin, for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, members. So on page 2 of the actual bill, there's actually rulemaking required by the agency to actually create the expedited filings. So if we say it's law immediately, then a company says, look, it's law immediately, how do I expedite a filing? But the Secretary of State, the agency is not able to create the rulemaking in time to do that. That's generally why we have that July 1st, let alone for the budgetary reasons. But rulemaking is necessary, so I think making it immediate is going to cause problems.
Thank you, Representative. Others for their first time? No. Representative Haroldson, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the good bringer of the amendment, my question can you give a little logic as to why you submitted this amendment as far as the direction for this?
Representative Smith.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to give the agency, I know they are logged with a lot of work, and bringing in more employees to the agency can help with some of the backlogs, since a lot of the employees are cross-trained, in addition to bringing in revenue quicker. So if they can get through the rules and all that, what needs to be done, hire that employee, this in theory should be able to pay for this position rather quickly, since this agency does have is a revenue generator for our state. So that was my idea. And as far as extra appropriations, I'll leave that up to Committee 2 to work that all out.
Anyone else for their second time? Seeing no one going to the microphones, you are now voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 47. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Amendment has not been adopted. Having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration on second reading is House Bill 80. We have amendments.
House Bill 80, sponsored by Representative Knapp. Stop ESG State Funds Fiduciary Duty Act.
We have amendments. Representative Knapp, Lawley, or Larson. Representative Lawley is making her way to the microphone. Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, I'm going to probably get it wrong, call it. I know. Look, I read amendment number 1 to House Bill 80. Thank you. I just want to get it on the right order.
Thank you, Representative. Proceed.
You can see this, if you're online, you can see this amendment there. What this does is it deletes on page 8, which was we had a lot of discussion yesterday about page 8 and what was there. What it does is it deletes lines 2 through 18 entirely. And then it inserts on H, every contract between an investment entity and a fiduciary to invest state funds
shall include a clause that the fiduciary has been made aware of and has agreed to follow the requirements of this section when making investments. So we've had a lot of testimony and talking about this bill. I do serve on the Minerals Committee, and some of the concerns, and one of the large ones had to do with the burden that these things put on the people who are managing our money, and particularly the part about kind of sanctioning them for certain actions under the bill. So we worked together, Representative Knapp and I, and to try to take those out and then just kind of acknowledge the fact that they are contracts that they sign, and just that they are aware of these kind of investment goals that we have, and they agree to follow them. So I'll let Representative Knapp, if I could.
No names. A good representative from coal country, maybe, or something to that effect. Representative Nicholas, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, all my gnashing of the teeth last night and sharpening knives, and I've read this amendment, and I appreciate the two legislators getting together because this solves the problem. So, yeah, all in favor.
Thank you, Representative Nicholas. Representative Knapp, your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Just in following up with that, I appreciate the work of the good representative, and it's a good compromise and continues to make a good bill better. So I would advise an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative Knapp. That's first time. Any others for the first time? Second time? Question being called. You are being asked to decide on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 80. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 80 has been adopted. Next amendment for our consideration is House Bill 80, second amendment number 2. Representative Larson, JT, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'll respectfully withdraw second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 80.
Feeling a lot of love in the House. Thank you, Representative Lawson. Next reading, appreciate that. Next, second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 80. Representative Knapp.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would submit second reading amendment number 3 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Move. You'll need to move.
Move. This amendment actually makes the good bill that got better perfect. So if you look on page number 2, under fiduciary commitment, it talks about the fiduciary or trustee's purpose in managing the investment of state funds, including, and then it lists A and B. But in that line, number 11 on this bill, but it says, but not limited to. And I would like to strike that line because that would preclude that there might be more, and there is not. So just strike but limited to and leave the colon, because we all know how painful removing a colon can be.
Thank you, Representative Knapp. Representative Lawley for her first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just rise in support of this amendment, and I appreciate the work of the good representative from the coal country. This is, again, kind of tightening in this language so that a phrase like that we lawyers love to use, but it's really not great in this kind of a situation because it leaves too much open and possibility. So I really do appreciate him bringing that amendment, and again, it kind of addresses those broader concerns that we already talked about. So thank you, and on and for them.
Thank you, Representative Lawley. Representative Washington, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my question for the bringer of the amendment is, when you say this makes the bill perfect, does that mean that the exposure that our retirees are so concerned about and that the investment folks who've been commenting about this legislation have been so concerned about, that 100% of those worries are now addressed. Do we have that assurance?
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bear, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in support of this amendment. Oftentimes you'll hear this term, we want to do a rifle shot rather than a shotgun approach. That's what this amendment does. This makes this very narrowly focused. One of the criticisms of the bill was that, well, gosh, if a company had a statement on their ESG, about ESG on their website, that this bill would pull them in. The change in this language ensures that individual companies are not pulled in, but rather just the manager, their decisions based on profit versus social engineering is the decision-making, and that is what this bill will then address, so that it doesn't go clear down to the point where, a particular company's statement or an executive of that company's statement online or on a interview would be pulled into and made a question based on this bill. So it really makes the bill tight and on and for the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? First time? Seeing none, we're going to the second time. Representative Knapp, for your second time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Just to answer the good chairman's question on returns, as we all heard in debate, this was put into place in 2023. And so we've been operating with this basic rules, codifying it into law since 2023. So if any of the retirees feel a little scared by the testimony and by the fiscal note, I would point you to online. Our returns are listed for 2024, and those returns were some of the best returns we've ever had, both investing in Wyoming companies and Wyoming projects, and also in individual stocks as well as funds. So if you want the true fiscal note and true evidence of what this impact will have on our financial returns, look to that 2024 financial report, and you'll see that we're in good shape and heading into a great future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their second time? Seeing none, I would entertain a call for the question. Question being called. Members, you are voting on second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 80. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill, second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 80 has passed. House Bill 80, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 116. Reading clerk.
House Bill 116, sponsored by Representative Ottman. Driver's licenses, unauthorized alien restrictions.
We have amendments. Representative Clouston, amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Amendment number 1 to House Bill 116. Members, this is a pretty simple amendment. In the bill, it talks about unauthorized aliens. I'd like to change that to illegal aliens. The reason being, you can be an unauthorized alien, meaning you can be here, you've overstayed your work visa, you're still allowed to be here, you're just not allowed to work. A legal alien says, you're in this country illegally. You cannot be here. You cannot be in the state of Wyoming or anywhere else. So just trying to do a little cleanup here. I'm not an attorney. This was brought to my attention that this would be an improvement on this bill, and thus I'm bringing it in front of this body. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Clouston. Any others for their first time? Representative Bear, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just rise in opposition to this amendment. And the reason is I appreciate the bringer's intent. We have the definition of unauthorized, and it's pretty explicit in the first pages of the bill. And so switching the wording to a pretty clear word, I do agree that illegal is a pretty clear word, but having that broader definition that really gets to the meaning of unauthorized is important. It's in the bill. And so on and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Bear. Any others for their first time? First time, second time. Back to the bringer of the amendment, if he so sees fit. Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, again, this was just brought to me. We have a military person whose fiance is here. She's an unauthorized alien, but not an illegal alien. She does have a driver's license, the ability to drive here in the United States from a different state. So she would be in Wyoming now, unable to drive with her unauthorized alien. So just trying to change that, clean this up a little bit. I don't really have a heartburn either way. This just came as maybe an improvement on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Clausen. I'll look for oh, we did seconds already. Yep, sorry, Representative. Question being called. You members are voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 116. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Second reading amendment has been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to HB 116, please stand. I'm a no. All those opposed? Ladies and gentlemen, the amendment has not been adopted, 23 to 35. The speaker's ears are plugged, obviously, so, yeah, huh? Excuse me, can I hear? No, sorry. All right, let's see, that is, yes, that is it. So, House Bill 116, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Seeing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 169. House Bill 169, having been read 2 separate times.
Nope.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Need to read it in.
Oh, you gotta read it in, I'm sorry. Don't mean to jump the gun. Go ahead.
House Bill 169, sponsored by Representative Locke. Homeowner tax exemption, 2025, 2026.
We do have amendments. I'm sorry, Body. House Bill number 169 has a second reading amendment number 1. Representative Yin. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 169 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, so yesterday I brought up the idea of why are we giving money to people in California who live here for 1 month of the year? We would still be giving them a property tax exemption with this bill. I heard the consideration of the department can't necessarily administer it, and if we wanted to administer it immediately, which I think is the goal of the bill, we can't put a roadblock in the way of the department. And I think that's important to recognize. So I made sure in this amendment that we only make it happen for the second year. So we'll still make the exemption happen for the first year, but we'll still give the department time to figure out how to administer it for the second year. I think it's really important, and frankly, the money that we could save by not giving this money to people who live out of our state could be used to help the department have a system to make sure that we don't give that money away. And it'd probably be a significant amount of money because we have quite a few members, we have quite a few folks across the state who own property in the state but don't live here. And I also, to make it very clear, I also thought about renters when having this consideration. So the requirement isn't that it's owner occupied, just that the home is occupied. So if you have a rental property, I don't want that landlord to raise the rent on the renter because their property taxes stayed high. I want to make sure that the renters still could benefit from this. And so it's just that the house has to be occupied. We have lots of homes that sit empty much of the year because those people don't live in our state. We shouldn't be giving them a tax exemption for 50%. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bear, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I appreciate the bringer's intent. And if we could do this in a really straightforward and simple way, I would be all on board with this. The problem is twofold. One is the intent of the bill itself is to provide this tax relief generally to anybody who is a property owner that has paid taxes. So there is no application process whatsoever. That's the first issue. So in order to determine who is a owner or who is an occupier, you would have to gather data. Most of it would be an attestation from somebody saying, I've lived here more than so many months, whatever. We'd have to have a lot more sideboards on it, but we're not asking anyone to fill out an application. And the third issue is that the department that's going to administer this does not have the data that goes with this particular amendment. So we would have to begin, and maybe a year's enough time to gather that data. I don't know. I don't know. It could take 2 years to gather that data. It could take longer. But we would need to find out, the data would be who lives in their home more than half the year, or whatever sideboards we put on it, which this amendment does not have those sideboards. So I would just resist this amendment at this point, and we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Davis, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bringer of the amendment there, how does this affect if you have multiple homes that you own, but you have them rented, I guess is my question. How does that apply across that board or into the bill? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other representatives for the first time? Representative Lean, for your first time. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bringer of the amendment, I appreciate that you're looking out for the renters. I just want to ask why you came up with 6 months and not 8 months, as 8 months is what's in the long-term homeowners, for clarity and consistency within the law.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Locke, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I first want to thank the bringer of the amendment. I think there's some a valid conversation in here, but I would resist this amendment for some of the reasons discussed, just for some of the complexities. And is this the right approach to identifying, the homeowners? I know this issue has been discussed extensively with the department, and there are definitely some complexities and some issues as to whether this is the right approach to doing this. So again, I really appreciate this coming up, and I do think it's a great conversation. But for this one, we're looking to get some relief to our taxpayers fairly quickly. And then, of course, as you guys know, this sunsets, we get out of this. So again, I would propose we resist this amendment, but thanks again to the bringer of the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? Still on first time. Seeing no one, Representative Bear, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did miss that there is a sideboard that says 6 months on this amendment. I apologize for that. But again, I think the previous speaker that mentioned the other program that has an 8-month time limit would probably be more appropriate. But again, that particular program requires an application. This bill, no application. So unfortunately, this entire idea really doesn't match up with the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their second time? I have Davis, Lean, Locke, and Representative Yin. No one else? Representative Yin for second time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for the member who said they have multiple homes or with constituents with multiple homes and they rent out their homes, again, they would still get this exemption. The renter would be occupying the home for more than 6 months of the year, so the property would be eligible for the exemption. For the folks who wondered about 6 months versus 8 months, If you qualify for the 8 months, that means that the department has that data already for you, and you'd automatically qualify for the 6 months. Why there's a discrepancy? I think because I purposely put this out as a second reading amendment, so if there were more concerns, we could work on them. So happy to work with those representatives that wanted to see it more synchronized. If we want to make it 8 months, I'm happy to sign on. I'll help draft it, and I'll ask you to sign on for an 8-month one. The concerns about whether the department can do it, we're not going to find out if the department can do it if we don't actually put it into law. And frankly, we have still time in our process for them to testify on whether it can work or can't work. They're not going to testify about it if it's not going to be in the bill, right? So if it goes across the hall and it's not in the bill, they're not going to automatically tell us they can and can't do it. If we put it in the bill, they have the chance to talk about it on the other side and then have it come back and see what happens at that point. The real concern is I don't want to give away our taxpayer money to people who don't live in the state of Wyoming. I think that's a real concern. We're essentially spending a lot of money on this bill. And if any amount that we can save and not send to people who don't live here, I think is a really good idea. And so with that, I'll ask you to support the amendment. Again, there's still time in the process. And if it fails, I will bring in 8 months for a third reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Members, you are voting on a second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 169. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has not been adopted. On to second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 169. Representative Williams, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 169.
Thank you.
Members, as we discussed yesterday, this legislation really hurts some small towns and rural counties, especially in House District 2. These are services and people that will be damaged by this legislation. This amendment is an attempt to address this issue. And in this amendment, I define hardship counties as counties in which one mill yields less than $300,000. In comparison, 1 mill in the county in coal country yields upwards of $5 million. The meat of this amendment is found on page 4, lines 1 through 11. Delete entirely and insert. I'll go to the second sentence there that amounts distributed in each year shall first be distributed to reimburse each county with an assessed value for the prior tax year corresponding to the most recently completed calendar year of less than $300,000 per mill for the reduction in tax revenues due to the exemption under this paragraph. I understand this amendment isn't perfect, but I do believe that it is important to make hardship counties whole first and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other members for the first time? Representative Lawley, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. Washakie County, can I say it? My county is a hardship county, and by significant amount. The threshold for hardship is $300,000 per mill. Washakie County is around $159,000 per mill. So we're down almost half of the threshold. And so these kind of cuts for us are significant. And it just affects us differently. And I think what we're asking really is for the body to consider that and make an exception for us, that we don't go to the 50% threshold, that we get full backfill for those as a way of accommodating that. So anyway, on in support of the bill, and thank you for.
Thank you, Representative Lawley. Any other members? Representative Eklund. Please proceed. First time.
Mr. Speaker. So I wasn't going to get up to talk about this, but just in case I don't get another chance, I usually support these efforts that hurt small communities, and it will hurt any of those small communities. I happen to live in a county that I'm a small community in a county, the East Side, small towns, small schools. Everybody's affected by this. If the figures I've heard are correct, to the big counties, I would guess my county might be the largest one, it's going to be a $40 million hit. Now, how is that not going to affect the schools and the towns and everybody else, just like it does the small districts? I support this amendment, but I hope people will think about what it's going to happen to your district regardless. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Eklund. Representative Baer, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to address one of the points of the previous speaker, just so you all understand, our Constitution requires that we, as a state, fund public education. So we have a mechanism that ensures that if there's any shortfall to funding of education, we go into our savings account and we make sure that the schools are made whole. So whatever we, like the 50%, if it were to be that much that didn't apply to schools, and then they used up their reserves and ended up having to be filled from savings, it's automatically set up to do that. So schools will be funded at 100%. The bringer of the amendment, I appreciate. The bringer of the bill and I have spoken about this issue for some time now and looked for solutions. And I really appreciate the sentiment of this particular approach. It's very, I think it is actually equitable based on the cash flows of the different counties. And so I'm in support of the idea. I just don't believe that it belongs in the bill itself. And I'm going to suggest and I'm going to support the bringer of this amendment to do this type of legislation in the supplemental budget. The issue with that is the supplemental budget will only be for 1 year. This bill is for 2 years. So we would have to come back in our budget and ensure that we applied this type of ideology of spreading the money out again in that second year. But I think it's the right way to do it because we've got a lot of complexity going on all at once here, and there are different measures that are coming through the body, and I think giving us that extra week and a half to see, what are the other measures and how can we make sure that counties, cities, especially the smaller ones that are going to be hurt the most, how they're kept whole. This is the right way. I just don't think this bill is the right place. Thank you. On and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Davis. Oh, excuse me, not Davis. Sorry. Didn't mean to get you out of the starting blocks. Representative Connolly's been waiting patiently. Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After listening to the good guy over here, I don't know what to say about that. I think he makes some sense, but it seems like it's just going to get really complicated doing the budget and the way that might happen. So I'm in favor of this amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Davis, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question here about funding the schools is fine and dandy, but those schools can operate without the infrastructure of the municipality in that area. If we can't plow the roads to get the kids to the school, it doesn't do any good to fund the school.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Campbell, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would ask for some clarity regarding this amendment before voting on it. Truly appreciate the intent of this amendment in honoring those hardship counties. Absolutely, I understand. And my concern, and maybe I'm reading it incorrectly, so we would be reimbursing, right, that loss the following year after that's been assessed. So the amounts that were received, 1/2 of that would go to our hardship counties first. The concern I have is towards the end where it says any remaining funds would then be distributed proportionally to each county, which concerns me because those larger counties, depending on the availability of funds, if there are funds, if there are not funds, may not get any funds if there aren't any left over. So I understand the hardship counties. I know for my county, because of the over 65, we have already had 1,000 claims for that exemption, which is about a $2 million hit. This bill alone would add an additional $5 million hit to our county. So we're looking at $6 million between the two. And yes, we have about 60,000 residents. That's a significant hit, right? So if the intent is, if we have any money left over, then those counties that aren't hardship counties will divvy up the funds equally. That's of serious concern. So if you could clarify, if that could be clarified, Mr. Speaker, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Yin, for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. To the good member that talked about pushing this into the budget bill as an amendment there, I would ask the body to actually resist that consideration and really just consider the policy on this bill alone. This is a statute change, and it is something that will be in statute. And if we want policy to talk about what that statute does, it should be within the statute that we are discussing, not within the budget bill, which mainly shouldn't be about statute changes. And so with that, I'm not going to speak for or against the actual policy. I would say you should consider it for this bill and not try to push it into another budget bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Yin. Representative Locke, you've been waiting patiently. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me just say this, that I really am grateful for the bringer of this amendment. That being said, there are some specific things in this amendment that I think make it a problem. But I did want to at least say to the body that I think this conversation on the hardship counties is important to hear from all, those that are hardship and those that are not hardship. I'm going to ask you to resist this amendment, but I do think that this is a very important conversation. And going back, I know we've had conversations on where it best resides, but I do think we need to consider these hardship counties. And again, thank you for bringing it. But for this specific amendment, there's some wording in here that makes this, creates more confusion than it helps. But at the end of the day, again, thank you for bringing it. And I just ask you resist this, but keep the conversation going a bit so we best understand this issue.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? Representative Harshman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker and members, I just wanted to, on this amendment, there's more information on all these amendments I just sent to your mailbox. What we talked about yesterday were what are the effects of this bill on each individual county. And then you can see the school mills, and then you can see the county 12 mills. Now there's 2 counties that don't assess 12 mills. And then you can see that all other. And those would be the cities, municipalities, the special districts that are in your county. So as you open that up and see that, that's how that looks. Now, that's the total cost of this bill. It has an appropriation for $225 million that is on the goldenrod that you got today, and that will backfill half of that amount. Okay, so when you see that, that's a yearly total, not a 2-year total. It's a yearly total, and the backfill will be half of that amount. Okay, and I'll be around for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Harshman. Representative Lloyd for his first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I'm hearing a couple of things that I just want to make sure I clearly understand. So yesterday, when we were debating on this bill, we talked about, I think, 125 coming out of the general fund, 125 million coming out of general fund, and then 100 million coming out of the LSRA. We don't fully fund 2 years because of the impact it would have on general fund and the LSRA. Then today we talk about schools having a backstop, which is correct. We just don't note, we note that the backstop is for savings. Well, the backstop for that savings is the same fund that's funding the 100 million, which is the LSRA. So so we have to be sure we understand where that money's coming from. And so we can kind of dance around that, but we're really impacting the LSRA potentially very significantly. Now, I think I heard once yesterday, and I've heard twice today, the bringer of the bill talk about some conversations, some great questions brought up from the bringer of this amendment and some others, and how he's working to understand and feels that it's an important conversation to have to where we can fully understand it. I agree. Let's get the answers before we do it. And I think this is really, this conversation on property tax is really important, but to acknowledge and identify the shortfalls, but then moving ahead with it, I think seems to be a little problematic. I do appreciate the work and support the amendment of the good representative from up in the northeast part of the world, because these some of these smaller counties really are going to be impacted. We need to make sure that they're made whole before we start splitting the bacon with everybody else. So I also support, because I think this is the bill it does belong to, because this is the bill we're talking about property tax. And then to divert that conversation on how we fund it back to the supplemental budget bill, where we're only going to address 1 year of it, when we're trying to address it 2 years in this bill, doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? Representative Nicholas, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bringer of the amendment, did you do a breakdown of what this does for each county? Because we ought to have LSO put that together so we can actually see what the impact is, because wouldn't that be hard to do those calculations? And so people would understand exactly what the impact is. I think that would be a useful process. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wharf, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the bringer of this bill, and I do think there's more we need to look into it a little bit deeper. I think it's a great idea. I remain resolved in doing this. We want to do so in such a fashion that we're not causing harm to our local governments. That was my commitment when I came down here. But I can assure you, I feel like this is, I guess I step back, I've heard everybody talk about the rainy day account. And, I think the federal government, or I guess the bigger government, I don't know how you refer to it, but the guys in the other side of this country, they sent a lot of money out to the states to help for COVID. And I think this is the time for us to tap into our rainy day account. I think we're rubbing our hands way more than we need to. We have a lot of money, and I think it's time that we help the people that live here. They are facing a burden, and I think we have an obligation to remove that from them. I'm not afraid to tap into the rainy day account. And so I guess I look at it, if we need to take more money out of there, we'll take more money out. I think that's the whole purpose. It isn't just to invest. It's not just to invest. It is a rainy day account to help the people, and I think it's time we tap into it. I would resist this. I would hope that we can come back with a better amendment. I think it's been suggested we look at how this impacts other counties. There's a lot of information, a lot of moving parts on this. It's not done, but I think we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Sherwood, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think great comments, great debate here. I just want the body to know that our savings generate in investment earnings what is equal to 30% of our budget. So that is why we can keep our tax base low. That's why we don't have to go back to our constituents and say, oh dear golly, we need to find more money for basic essential services. So I just want you to be wide-eyed and bushy-tailed as we talk about pros and cons of the decisions that we make. When we dip into our savings, that means we have less coming in to our general fund via investments. So those are the trade-offs.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? First time, we are talking about second reading amendment number 2 to HB 116. Seeing no one second time. Speak to a second time. Seeing none, to the bringer. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the question that was asked, how are the counties that aren't hardship counties affected? It's my understanding that the appropriation for this, that attached to this bill, there's $25 million over what will be needed to fulfill the responsibilities of this 50% cut. If I'm in error, please smarten me up later, but that's my understanding, to where I believe there's enough extra there to take care of those hardship counties without impacting the payment to the counties that are not hardship. And I would appreciate your aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, you are voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 116. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has not been adopted. Next amendment for our consideration, 169. Let's see, we got.
Mr. Speaker.
Or, excuse me, 116. Or no, yeah, 116. Is this a bringing it? It is 169. Yep, 169. Second Amendment number 2 here, go to number 3. Okay. Second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 169. Representative Wiley, if you would please deliver that for us. Please move the
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would like to move second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 169. And with that,
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I'll give a brief description of what I'm trying to do here. We've had debate now for 2 days, and we're listening to everybody talk and kind of leg wrestle here again. I guess I'll refer to that as leg wrestling debate, whatever you want to call it. And it's about equity, right? We keep talking about equity. We just heard, our wealthy counties yesterday say, $1 million's not enough. We need 2. We need 3. This is not fair. This is not equitable. Now today we're hearing our lesser profitable counties, or however you want to label them without insulting, no do insult, say we want to be considered, special because we can't weather this. So I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm thinking, what is equitable? And we're asking, where are all these numbers coming from? Well, the answer I've heard so far is like, well, we thought 2 million's good. We thought 1 million's good. We had this committee, we worked through it, but there's nothing really behind that, right? So I'm sitting in my desk yesterday and I'm doing middle school math, junior high math, however you want to think about it. And I look at the average of the housing throughout Wyoming. That average is roughly 350. So, okay, let's say these statistics aren't perfect, right? So for a margin of factor, let's up it 25%. Well, with that math, we come in here and we have $450,000. So what I'm asking is bring that cap down from $1 million to $450,000. And does everybody get exactly everything they want? No. But I still want to help. I don't want to leave Wyomingites behind in the dust. But at the same time, we can't keep increasing these levels because we've done these social experiments. We've seen them throughout history, right? There's a country in the East, and it used to be called the Iron Dome, the Iron Curtain. They had that social experiment once you go too far. It didn't work. There's a country to the south of us. They have premium cigars. They had that social experiment. It didn't work. But when we come back and we say we don't want to leave people behind, we want to make sure we give some relief here, some help here. I think this is how we can do it equitably. And this is using the median value with a conservative correction in here and always rounding up. And we'll lower this from $1 million to $450,000. And I believe we'll be able to help Wyomingites, and it just keeps it more equitable. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Representative Wiley. Representative Kelly for his first time.
Thank you. On and against the amendment, the figure $450,000 being the median, have we noticed the biggest problem with property tax increases have been in our counties where prices are significantly higher than $450,000. I'm from a county where many people just 4 years ago, their home was worth $350,000 to $400,000, is now $600,000 to $700,000, and those are the people being hammered. So this bill would defeat the whole purpose of what we're trying to do in some places. I'm sorry, this amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Locke for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I do want to thank the bringer for this conversation. It is actually a very good conversation. And that being said, I want to resist this amendment as well. Going back to what we said before, one of the goals here, and again, we're not giving money back, but this is where we're trying to leave some money in our people's pockets and on kitchen tables across our state. And there's a large number of people in that, above that 450,000. Their houses, they might have bought them at 400,000, and now they're at 700,000 and in that range. And this is an attempt to be fairly comprehensive. I know the 1 million limit is not perfect. That being said, it does cover roughly 96% of the households, a little over 96% of the households. So again, I'm actually on and against the amendment, but thank you for the conversation. I think it's an important one.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Byron for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the amendment and against the amendment, I think we're just grasping at straws here. You know, we worked really hard to get to the number that's in this bill. I think there still is work to be done. In my neck of the woods, where the valley has stars and the mountains are sharp, this amendment would greatly hurt that area. And don't think that every one of your communities doesn't have homes that are valued significantly higher than this. And because of the free market the last 4, 5, 6, 10 years in some of our areas, they have seen a rapid increase in appreciation. On and against.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Harrelson for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against, I think I want to just push back a little bit. Giving a tax break, this is not a refund program. This is a tax break, meaning you send less in. Definitely does not fall in line with a social experiment that we talked about. That isn't the case. This is simply saying, hey, we're going to let you keep more of your hard-earned money. That's how this works. And then just coming from one of those counties, we call them mineral deficient. That's the best way to call poor counties poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Heiner for his first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the bringer. I appreciate his efforts in doing this, but we as a body are making some big decisions here that not only impact the citizens, but it impacts the state and the wealth of our state. So this amendment, does it affect the appropriation of the bill? I don't see that in the amendment. So that apparently the appropriation will remain at the total amount. But will this, how much will be expended with this decreased amount for a cap?
Thank you, Representative Heiner. Representative Jarvis for your first time.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm not entirely sure if I'm on or against this amendment, because what this amendment proposes and in general is changing the bar of an equity line for which we can provide a tax break for 2 years. And I'm not sure this amendment, because when a lot of people have stopped me in the last couple of days and I've gotten a lot of emails, and people whose houses are technically above have spoke and said, I don't need a tax break. And then there are some that are in the situation, like my good representative above, who their houses, the inflation has significantly impacted. My wondering is if it's significantly impacted their ability to pay for it, after 2 years, are they going to still be able to pay for it? Because the inflation may not stop. So I'm not sure if this amendment necessarily solves the problem. While I appreciate the equity and the attempt to kind of change the bar, I'm not sure that this exemption, or like as far as providing a tax break for 2 years, addresses inflation and true property tax issues.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lean for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to ask, what does this do to the counties to give them the opportunity to evaluate for the People's Initiative? Because that is coming in 2 years, and it is very unlikely that it's going to fail. I believe that keeping this at the $1 million cap gives the counties a great opportunity to look around and see what their budgets look like on and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Lean. Any others for their first time? Going once, twice, no one at the microphones. Second time, Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, I'm going to jump around a lot. There was a lot there. People's Initiative. It'll do nothing because it's going to be on the ballot and the people will tell us what to do. So thank you for that one. Mineral deficient counties. Thank you very much, Representative from one. I've been in support of relief for the last couple of years that I've served in this
Excuse me,
body.
Representative Wiley. Members, let's keep it. If we're going to have discussions, things like that, move it out so we can hear. Keep it down. Please proceed, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll talk a little louder as well. I've been in support of, property tax relief for the last 2 years that I've served in this body. I've voted for it. I've moved it forward. But this question of equity keeps coming up, and a lot of the amendments that we've seen today are trying to deal with that. So I'm trying to bring a solution to a problem. That's what I'm doing here. To the speaker in the back that deals with statistics, I could tell you something about statistics. I went into a statistics class in my higher education, and I was told the only thing worse than a lie is a statistic. And I firmly believe in that. Statistics can be good, statistics can be bad. It depends on how you apply them. This math here will give us some standing to say this is equitable. This may not help everybody. This may not give tax breaks to our rich for as much as they would like, or to the folks that don't have as much and have to require the backfill there as much that would be needed if we go as high as we're asked. This right here would bring us down to a level playing field and give everybody some help and some relief while we have time to refine the way taxes are structured in this state. So this is not leaving anybody behind. This is helping people now, no matter how expensive your house is. And if you ask me about inflation, I don't know. It's going to keep going up. We keep chasing inflation with the numbers that we see on the page, and it never catches. I don't think we ever will catch it. These savings accounts we're talking about that are generating 30% of our revenue are never going to keep up with inflation. But this right here is something that we can do for the people at home and give them that tax break that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I do have others that could speak second time. Seeing none, I would entertain call for the question. Question being called for. Members, you are voting on second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 169. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The amendment has not been adopted. Moving on to amendment number 4 to House Bill 169. House Bill number 169, amendment number 4, being brought by Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move House second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 169. Ask for your favorable consideration, members. Members, I'd first like you to open that email I sent you with the cost of this bill. As one thing, we're all appropriators. We're going to balance the budget. And if you look at the goldenrod today, the LSRA is moving down. And if you look at what's going to happen with general fund and how we going to have to transfer money to the budget reserve for a 5% reserve, it's going to be about 1.3 billion left in the LSRA when we leave here in another 6 weeks. So at 1.3, and then that backfilled education ends at 500 million for the LSRA. Okay, so if we pass this, we're going to have about 5 years to backfill education if we're going to continue this policy. And I know it's a 2-year bill, but I just want to, and I guess all I'm trying to do is pay our bills. When you bring a bill, pay for it. And I get it. I think we can pay for this, but we can't pay for it out of our savings. It won't be able to work. Now, some of you supported the concept in the budget of if you're going to appropriate something, then you have to take something away. And that's really kind of what this bill does. It takes 125 million out of the LSRA and 100 million general fund, or maybe I got that vice versa, but so I think how are we going to keep this going? Then it's a 2-year deal. And then we heard talk on first reading about, you know, the initiative and the people, the 15% in each county that signed it. And so as I laid awake last night thinking about this bill, Mr. Speaker, maybe this is it. Maybe it's not 2 pennies for a million. Maybe the good chairman of revenue and this 50% off your taxes up to $1 million. Maybe that's the deal. And then how would you pay for it? So I started doing a little league math in my head. And, you know, a penny's 264 million roughly.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
And Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what's your point?
Mr. Speaker, I'd request a ruling from the chair on the germaneness on this topic and if on this particular amendment.
Rules Committee, please
you,
come
Mr.
to the
Chairman.
front. Oh, just ruling from the chair. You just want it from me?
Mr. Speaker, yes, I'm just asking for a ruling from the chair.
Rules Committee, yeah. Yeah. Rules Committee, please assemble at the front. House will come back to order. The chair will say that the amendment is germane to the bill, and Representative Harshman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you'll look on that spreadsheet that has the cost of the bill, and again, you can see the education totals of that second and third column, about 125 million, Mr. Speaker. And then you can see the county mills and your county, and then the all others would be the municipalities, special districts, et cetera. I think I already said that. So back on this amendment, Mr. Chairman, I've moved it. Really what this amendment does, and if you have the amendment in front of you, folks, page 1 of the amendment, first of all, deletes the sunset date. So this policy change would go on until legislative action changed it sometime in the future. So it eliminates the 2-year sunset, deletes the appropriation. And then, Mr. Chairman, on 3915-104 now, this starts sales tax statutes, 3915, and that is on line 30 on page 1. But I kept a couple amendments that this body did on a previous House bill in a previous session. This first one, if you look on line 37, there's an exemption to this 0.75%, 3/4 of a penny sales tax, and it's for industrial facilities that are being permitted by industrial siting. So if we have some large, big things coming to our state, they will be exempt from this increase. Okay, so that's on paragraph J on page 1. Mr. Speaker, flipping over to page 2 of the amendment, you can see at the top, members 1 through 6 is a 0.75% increase. So the state sales tax goes from 4 to 4.75 on line 6. Mr. Speaker, on Romanet 2, lines 8 through 13, it gives the chief executive, if there's enough money in this account that reimburses our county treasurers and our counties each year to pay the bills for this exemption, the governor can reduce the rate by up to steps of a 1/4 penny. So that's what Romanet 2 is. And then, Mr. Speaker, Romanet 3 is really an amendment from last year as well. A former representative brought this, and I thought it's important that if for any reason this exemption goes away, this 0.75 goes away as well. Okay, Mr. Speaker, then on the sales tax distribution on 3915-111 on page 2, you can see on paragraph R, it goes to an account with the state treasurer, this property tax reduction account. It'll sit there with the state treasurer. And then on Romanet 1 under R on line 39, page 2, it's reimbursed to your county treasurer, and then he pays all these special districts, all your municipalities, every bill in your county, just like he does now. When we pay property taxes, it all goes to the county treasurer. And then he sends it out and credits each community college, special district, weed and pest, hospital district, firefighters, cemetery districts, whatever they are. So that'll stay the same. None of that will change. None of those folks will even know. And that's lines 39 through 47. And then the dates are this July 1st to June 30th, because we'll start that on the fiscal year, and they'll be paid back then. On page 3, Mr. Speaker, Romanet 2, lines 11 through 15, that if there are some remaining funds left, say there's 15 million or 20 million left over, it does really kind of what the previous amendment tried to do. It tells the legislature to look at this and maybe give it back to local governments in direct distribution. So that's what it says on line 15. Doesn't compel them to, but it asks future legislatures to do that. Mr. Speaker, then on line 17, page 3, 3916 is just use tax. See, we're one of the few states that have sales and use tax still separated in statute. And I think that'll be a great project for future revenue committee to maybe combine those together, but it's the same language, Mr. Speaker, on sales and then use tax. And then, so that's the amendment, members. And then, Mr. Speaker, I a handout that's in your tray on your desk. If you could all grab that handout, please. Okay, so really, Mr. Speaker, what this bill does is add 0.75 sales tax to cut your property taxes in half. Now, what's the dollars and cents on that? Look on paragraph 2, and it's in that bold at the bottom. And you can read that, but the average Wyomingite, 3-person family, $2,000 in property taxes, right? And about $1,000 in sales tax each year. So what will happen with this bill goes into effect? Going to be about a $170 increase on sales tax to that average family, and they're going to save about $1,000 in their left pocket. It's going to be a massive tax reduction for all our people. So really, that's it on that. Then if you want to look at who actually kind of pays these taxes and what we compare to other states around us, you can see at the bottom of that first page, Mr. Speaker, if we went from our statewide average of 5.48, I think we'd be at 6.23. You could see a couple neighbors would be a little lower than us, but I think that one that's with the great faces and great places, yeah, they're a little lower than us, but they tax everything. They tax your food, they tax your vet, they tax your farm implements, they tax your lawyer fees, they tax your accountant fees, they tax everything. So that burden is tremendous. We don't tax any of that. Mr. Speaker, and I know this body is, as we pull together as the 68th, there's been a lot of debate already. It's kind of unique. What I've seen has been some really important bills come. There's been a lot of debate. I think if you flip over on the backside, Mr. Speaker, on sales tax, just so we all kind of get up to speed on some of this, and you look at that 9 through 26, these are all the things in Wyoming that most people buy. And you can see what's sales taxable and what is not. And then finally, Mr. Speaker, I think, again, I just think this idea of a 50% reduction somehow, but then how do we pay for it is really simple. And can go on and on and on and not be a 2-year deal, and then have to rely on an election. And then here we are again, and then the 70th legislature is dealing with the same issue. We could solve this problem today. So, and again, Mr. Speaker, I didn't really know how to bring this. I thought about bringing it on third reading, and so we didn't have all this debate today. But then members will say, geez, why are you bringing this big amendment on third reading? We don't have time to think about it. And so here it is, Mr. Speaker, and I'd answer any questions. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Representative Harshman. Representative Locke for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the bringer. But this is a completely different bill, in my opinion. And this is a complete different change, complete forklift change in tax policy, to be quite honest with you. Significant potential unintended consequences and numerous other things. I'm not actually even saying, putting bad words out about the concept. I think they're there. But in terms of what we're attempting to do to get relief to the people right now and work through this, on and against this amendment, I think this amendment, if we were to put this in place, we have literally the unintended consequences are potentially significant. So I strongly urge a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Locke. Representative Lean for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, for one, don't want to go home to my constituents and say, hey, we cut your property tax in half, but I raised you a sales tax, because they have a ballot initiative coming in 2 years, and they have spoken and they want that done. House Bill 169 accomplishes the ballot initiative with a backfill for our county so that they will be protected. We ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Campbell, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I really appreciate about this amendment is I think it honors the intent of the bill, which is providing that promised property tax relief. And what this amendment does that I think the bill fails to do is make our cities and counties whole. Yes, I mean, in the bill, it was proposed that half of their loss would be reimbursed, which is not making our cities and counties whole. This amendment makes them whole. So a question I would have, though, moving forward is typically, I mean, the ratio, as far as our sales tax is concerned, the ratio of the amount per penny that the state keeps and then that is distributed to cities and counties, if that ratio would still be intact with this 0.75, or if that 0.75 would truly be in a separate pool. So all of that money then would go to the counties to make sure they are whole every time. That would be my question. So I think this may serve as a vehicle to how do we keep our cities and counties whole and provide property tax relief, not just for this year, for every year going forward, and is definitely worth considering, because in terms of net amount savings to each of those families sitting at their kitchen table, the net amount is pretty solid, and it keeps our cities and counties whole.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Representative Allen for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot go home and tell my constituents that I raised them another 0.75% tax. They are outraged that the largest city in county number 1 raised their taxes by 1%, and most all of my district does not receive any value from this 1 cent. They pay it and receive nothing from it because it all goes to the number 1 city. So I'm going to be adamantly against this. If we got rid of all property taxes, I could go home and tell my people we did this. But if we can't get rid of all property taxes, I am not going to raise them to 6.75% total sales tax in my county and district. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Nicholas, your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on and in favor of the amendment, ladies and gentlemen, what you tell your constituents when you go home is, we just handed you, to each and every citizen, $840. You didn't raise taxes. You handed them an extra $840 on every individual in their pocket with this bill, and reduced their property taxes. It's manna from heaven. And it's a simple process. As complicated as it looks, at the end of the day, it's quite simple. We save people money.
Thank you, Representative. Any others, first time? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's be honest about what we're doing here. We're asking those of our constituents with less to pay more than those who have more. Every single person is going to have to pay more. And I don't know what you heard at the doors, but I heard that the cost of everything is going up. And on that list of things that is taxable, it's electricity. I talked to a lot of people about the cost of their utilities. And this amendment, quite frankly, and also quite frankly, the bill, doesn't solve a problem of raising property values. Property taxes have not gone up. We haven't raised taxes. But wealthy people moving in from out of state have moved here and raised the costs of their neighbor's land. That's the honest conversation. So now this amendment comes in and gives, with the amendment and the bill, gives tax breaks to those people moving in, raising your neighbor's property value, causing them to pay more, and we're going to continue to keep giving tax breaks. And now we're going to put a burden on the taxpayer on the people that are complaining, that are renting, that are having to pay more for their electricity. That's the reality of what we're doing. No on the amendment.
Representative Yin, first time.
Mr. Speaker, I'm actually quite conflicted on the amendment because, you know, without the amendment, let's say we don't pass the amendment, right? We're saying, you know, local electeds will backfill you a little bit and you're going to have to be the bad guy and do the rest, right? You're going to have to raise mills, or you're going to have to get property sales tax increased in your municipality or county to make sure that you can actually pay your actual public services, because we're not going to backfill you 100%. So we are, if we pass the bill without the amendment, we're going to go home and tell our local electeds they have to be the bad guys. We're the heroes. We cut their property tax, but to actually get local services, the local communities have to be the bad guys. So this is at least being fiscally responsible on our part. Is it the right method to do that? I don't know. But I think that it's appropriate that if we're going to cut local services and try to be the hero to our constituents, that we don't ask other people to be the bad guys at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Any others for their first time? Bear in mind, you are working on second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 169. Any other discussion? Second time, back to the bringer, Representative Harshman.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, did you call on me? I couldn't. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker.
go ahead.
To bring this home, members, I think a lot of good comments and debate. I think you can go back home and actually tell your people I gave you a tax break. Biggest tax break in Wyoming history. Number 2, I preserved the finances of the state so we don't defund education over the next 5 years and then have to institute a sales tax increase, property tax increase, or heaven forbid, an income tax. I mean, you can't just not have a fire department in your town. Can't not have running water. All these services, they come from property taxes, folks. And so if we're going to reduce these property taxes, the conservative thing is in Wyoming, we pay our bills. That's what we do. We pay our bills. This is an easy way to pay our bills. And then if you look at who actually pays sales tax, one thing in Wyoming we're experts at is having out-of-staters pay a lot of our bills. We're really good at it. And the second largest payers of sales tax in Wyoming are visitors. After retail trade, it's the hospitality industry. It's a beautiful thing. And it's still an incredibly low rate. You go south, or you guys up in the corner go to the west and buy your groceries, you're paying a higher rate already. And so this 6.23 average state rate, you won't even notice it. But I tell you what, first time in my deal, living in center of the state, I had to split my property tax up. So when I wrote my Christmas check this year, I could only write half of it. I got to write the other half this spring. And then think about young people who are buying a home. It's going to reduce your home payment a couple $100 a month, your escrow payment. If we think giving half off property tax is a good idea, let's do it and pay for it. But don't do a 2-year thing and then pull it back. Say, yeah, it's just a 2-year deal. Then what? If we think this is a good idea, let's move forward with it. So, the time for property tax reform is now. And here's our chance. So I really appreciate the debate and everybody's attention to this matter and working for Wyoming. And with that, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harshman. It is tradition that we normally allow the bringer to close, but very good then. All right. Thank you, Representative Locke. Members, you are voting on second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 169. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 169 has not been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. You may be seated. All those opposed, more than 13. So amendment has indeed been rejected. Okay, I believe that is it. So we got one more second amendment. Got to get back to my little page here that tells me what I'm going to do. Got plenty of amendments here. Here we go. All right, having been read, House Bill 169 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall a bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration on 2nd reading is House Bill 172. Do you want, we better, what time is it? Oh my goodness. Okay. Sorry, but ladies and gentlemen, we are going to hold on to this until right after lunch. So I will call on my majority floor leader so somebody doesn't create a mutiny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know you just want to put your head down and keep going, but I move that the House stand in recess until 2:30.
You've heard the motion of the majority floor leader. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Yeah, ayes have it. We will stand in recess until 2 o'clock. Or 2:30, excuse me. Be back in session at 2:30. Thank you, members. Wow.
Mr. Speaker, committee announcements.
Oh, yes, sir. Committee announcements.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Bear.
Speaker. Your committee number 2 will be meeting 15 minutes ago in the appropriations room with the Joint Appropriations Committee to continue our supplemental budget discussions. We will also be meeting upon adjournment and missing the caucus meeting to begin our discussions on state-funded capital construction and supplemental K-12 school facilities appropriations number 2. That again is upon adjournment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Bear. Representative Knapp.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Your Corporations Committee number 7 will meet now. Doing bills HB 131, ballot drop boxes, HB 133, sanctuary cities, and HB 160, voter identification revisions in your extension room 005.
Thank you, Representative Knapp. Chairman Winter, Agriculture. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Ag Committee number 5 will meet on Thursday, at 7:30 a.m. We'll be discussing House Bill 61, House Bill 221, and House Bill 63. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll finish my chairman. Chairman Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee number 6, Travel, will meet upon noon recess tomorrow, January 23rd, in E005. It's going to be a continuation of yesterday, House Bill 5. We'll get to House Bill 204 and hopefully 211.
Representative Thayer, please.
Mr. Speaker, privileges of the floor.
Agree.
I just wanted to announce that Wyoming Economic WIDA is downstairs in room 05353 for lunch, and it is Olive Garden. They wanted to invite the House downstairs for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I wanted, committee number 3, Revenue, will be meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30, and we will be hearing 3 bills, HJ 4, Constitutional Amendment, Veterans Property Tax Exemption, HB 214, Local Government Payments, Electronic Payments, and HB 126, Sales Tax on Service Repeal.
Thank you, Representative. Any other announcements? See you back here at 2:30. The House will stand in recess at the gavel again. Is that what it is? Is it? Thank you.